Our I can statement is N18. I can explain and apply the rules for dividing rationals. And N19. I can interpret quotients in their real-world situations. This is day 1 of this lesson. Wanda really likes cake. She decided that 1 serving should be 3/5 of a cake. She has 4 cakes all the same size. How many servings does she have? Draw a diagram to model this situation. So try this one on your own and then press play again when you're ready to check and see how I did it. All right, the first thing I did was draw in my 4 cakes. And you might have drawn circles, and that's just fine. You can represent it using either shape. The next thing that I'm going to do is split them into fifths, because I know that that's what I need to be able to get 3/5 for my serving size. So I split each cake into 5 different pieces. And thanks for using your power of imagination to remember that these should be all the same size. Okay, the next thing I need to do is figure out how many servings there are, and 1 serving is 3/5 of a cake. So I'm going to circle 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full servings. And then I need to figure out how to represent these last 2 pieces. Now, the next question is going to ask us what our answer should be, and I think we can all agree that it would have 6 as the whole number part, but we need to decide how to represent these 2 pieces, and this is going to be tricky. There are 2 pieces, but remember my units on this need to be servings. And how many pieces does it take to make a serving? It takes 3 pieces. So I have 6 2/3 servings. Now, if I asked you how much cake is there left over, there would be 2/5 of the cake. But since it's the servings that we're looking for, it's 6 2/3. So, like we just decided, 6 2/3 servings is our answer for number 2. That's the answer that our diagram indicates. We could also have written this as 20/3. Okay, that's the improper fraction form, and that's going to be helpful with our next question. So, when we looked at the improper fraction version, we had 20 total pieces. And I had 4 cakes. And I had 5 pieces per cake. So the 20 pieces came from the 4 cakes times the 5 pieces for cake. I also know that 3 was my denominator. And that came from the number of pieces per serving. So I think that that's something that we could use to turn into a rule when we're doing similar types of problems. So we have 20 pieces that we divided into groups of 3. So that's the match between what we just noticed as well as the diagram. All right, now we're going to solve the problem using the rule. So we have 4 cakes, and I'm just going to write this over 1 since we're going to be working with a fraction. And that's going to be multiplied by 5/3, and that gives me 20/3, which is 6 2/3 servings. So what's important to note, and this is something that you might already have as a background knowledge, is that 4 over 1 divided by 3/5 is equivalent to 4 over 1 times 5/3. Now, last but not least, if we eat up 6 of those servings, how much cake is left over? We have 2 pieces of cake that are 1/5 of the cake. So remember, we had 2/3 of a serving left over because then there were 3 pieces per serving, but we have 2/5 of the cake because we need 5 pieces for 1 cake. So for the division problem, 4 divided by 3/5, why is the answer 6 2/3 rather than 6 2/5? Because we are looking for the number of servings versus cake. So 2/5 represents the cake left over, as we just talked about in the previous problem. I am making a soup that requires 5/6 cups of green beans per person. If I have picked 3 cups of green beans from my garden, how many people will I be able to serve? Draw a diagram to model this situation. All right, so I have drawn 3 rectangles to represent the 3 cups, and I've split each cup into 6ths. Then I'm going to circle groups of 5. So I've got one group of 5 here. Then I've got another group of 5 here. And I've got a group of 5 here. And then I've got 3 pieces left over. Now if I'm writing this as my servings, I have 3 servings. And then I have 1, 2, 3 fifths of a serving. So 3 3/5 of a serving. Now, if we had the 3 servings, so let's say I had 3 people that I served, if the question was how much of the green beans would I have left over, I would have 1/2 of a cup, 3/6. So let's take what we've seen in the examples and write them down as steps to dividing fractions. So step 1, convert all mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I am going to do 5 times 1 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6, so this becomes 6/5. Notice that I made it an improper fraction without including the negative, and then I'm just going to throw that on at the end, because the negative shouldn't change the value of my fraction. Okay, so I have -1/9 divided by -6/5. Then I am going to copy the first fraction. Then I'm going to change the division to multiplication. And then I am going to flip the second fraction. So I had 5 on the bottom, so I'm going to write 5 on the top. And -6 was on the top, so I'm going to write a negative and 6 on the bottom. And then from here, I can just multiply straight across like we learned in our rules from the last lesson. So -1 times -5 is going to be +5. And 9 times 6 is going to be 54. Now, the reason that I left the negative on the top is because it doesn't matter where the negative is in the fraction, the whole thing is still negative. And so by writing it in the top, like I did with the -1, it just makes it easy for me to figure out the sign of my final answer by multiplying the top 2 numbers. Try number 5 on your own. Start the video up when you're ready to check your answer. All right, so first I converted the fractions to improper fractions. Then I did copy dot flip. So I copied the first fraction, changed the second one to a multiplication sign, and then I flipped the second one. So the 3 was on the bottom, now it's on the top. 32 is on the top, so now it's on the bottom. If you want to, you can cross cancel at this step. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. So I noticed that 14 and 32 both have a common factor of 2, so I'm going to divide that out and be left with 7 and 14. But wait, 7 and 14 have a common factor of 7, so I'm going to divide those out. So I'm going to divide top and bottom by 7. I am going to be left with 1 on the top and 2 on the bottom. So even if you don't cross cancel all the factors all at once, you can still take a second step. So now when I multiply straight across, I am going to end up with 1 times 3, which is 3, and 5 times 2, which is 10. And I want to make sure my final answer is negative because negative divided by positive is a negative. So negative 3/10 is my answer for this one. Now try the calculator with these next two and start the video up when you're ready to check your answer. When I typed it into the calculator, I typed 3ABC1 ABC2 divided by -4 ABC1 ABC5, and I pressed enter, and I got -14 U7/10. So that lets me know that my final answer is -14 and 7/10. Don't forget to make sure that that's a negative in your calculator. If you get a syntax error, you probably use the subtract sign instead. And the answer for number 7 is 1 and 7/48. Now let's go through the steps to divide decimals. Our first step is to set up our division bar. Remember that the number out front goes underneath the division bar. So we've got 0.801. And the number that comes second, or our denominator, would go on the outside. So 0.09. Then we're going to move our decimal over based on the outside number, and my goal is to get that to become a whole number. So I'm going to move the decimal over 2 spaces. Now if I move the outside number 2 spaces, I have to do the same thing to the inside number. So I'm going to move it over 2 spaces. And then I'm going to place the decimal above the division bar. Now, if you're like me, I like to rewrite my division problem at this point so that it doesn't get confusing. So this is 9 divided into 80.1 with the decimal above the division bar. Then I'm going to divide like normal. I know that 9 goes into 80 8 times. 9 times 8 is 72. I take the difference. I get 8. I bring down the 1. 9 goes into 81 9 times. 9 times 9 is 81. I take the difference and I get 0, so that's how I know I'm done. And then I want to take a look at my signs. Negative divided by negative is a positive. So positive 8.9 is my final answer for this problem. Try number 8 on your own, and then start the video up when you're ready to check your answer. So our final answer is -1.5. Make sure that if you got a different answer, the first thing you check is that 5.4 went under the division bar and 3.6 went on the outside, because getting those two switched is the most common mistake. Pause the video to take a moment to look at the work if you want to see the evidence of how I got my answer. Now use the calculator to try problems 9 and 10, and start the video up when you're ready to check your answers. Alright, number 9 is -4.5, and number 10 is -6.3. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can rewind the video and watch as many times as you need to make sure you understand these concepts.